Hey there, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're looking into something pretty incredible, a brand new language model called Phi-4. I know,
Yeah.
I know. What is this, like the 10th one this year? But hear me out on this one, because this one's really causing a stir. And for good reason, too. I mean, even for all the advancements that we've seen, this one's really special. Phi-4 is a smaller model, but it packs a serious punch,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to things like reasoning. And get this, it's even beating out some of the larger models out there. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones with way more parameters.
Yeah. It's really challenging that whole bigger is better mindset. That's been kind of the dogma in AI for a while, but a 5.4 is really showing that you can get incredible results if you really just focus on quality data. It's not all about just scaling up.
Exactly. So today we're going to take a deep dive into all of that. By the end of this, you'll understand how Phi-4 works, why it's making waves, and yeah, what it can and can't do. Ready to get started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things that really jumped out at me in these reports is this emphasis on data quality. It's like they were obsessed with it, like making sure that Phi-4 was learning from the best possible sources.
Yeah, it's definitely a continuation of what we've seen with some of the earlier models in the 5 family, but they've really taken it up a notch with 5.4. They've actually used a ton of synthetic data, basically data that the model helped to create itself.
Whoa, hold on. The model is creating its own study guide. That's wild. Why would they go that route instead of just using, you know, all the text and code that's already out there?
Well, think about it this way. When humans learn, we don't just absorb information randomly, right? We learn best when things are presented in a clear and logical way. Synthetic data lets researchers create these data sets that are specifically designed to teach certain concepts or skills.
So it's like they're spoon-feeding it knowledge in a way to make sure it's learning in the most efficient way possible.
Exactly. Plus, the data is designed to be closer to how these models are actually
That's
used.
interesting.
Yeah, like for example, imagine you're trying to teach a language model to solve math problems. If you just feed it a bunch of equations and solutions, it might actually get confused by the way we write things down, humans. But with synthetic data, they can structure the problem in a way that makes more sense for the model.
I see. So it's like giving it a step-by-step guide instead of just throwing it in the deep end.
Exactly.
So that's synthetic data. What about the other stuff? What about all that text and code that's out there in the real world?
Well, they didn't just ditch all the human written stuff. They were still really careful about what they included.
So it's like a two-pronged approach. They're creating this synthetic data, and then they're also curating the best of the best from the real world. That's
Exactly.
really fascinating. So they've got this synthetic data. They've got this carefully curated collection of real-world text and code. What happens next?
That's post-training. That's
Oh.
the third pillar.
Oh, so even after all that data, there's still more to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They use techniques like supervised fine-tuning, or SFT, and direct preference optimization, DPO.
SFT and DPO. Break those down for us.
Well, you can think of SFT as giving the model specialized coaching, for very specific tasks. It's like training for a marathon. You might have a general fitness routine, but you'll also do specific workouts to target the muscles you need for the race, right?
Right.
That's kind of what SFT does for language models.
So they're fine-tuning it for certain skills.
Exactly.
And what about DPO?
DPO is more about teaching the model to prefer certain outputs over others. It's like having a coach that says, hey, this way of phrasing things is clearer, more effective. Try doing it more like this.
Okay, so they're really shaping the model's behavior then.
Exactly.
And one of the really interesting things they did with DPO was they actually trained Phi-4 to refuse to answer questions that it didn't know,
Right.
which is a huge deal for reducing hallucinations.
Absolutely.
You know those moments where a model just makes stuff up?
Yeah, it happens more often than you might think. But by training Phi-4 to recognize when it's out of its depth, it becomes much more reliable.
That's a big step towards responsible AI for sure. Now, before we get into all of that, I want to go back to the synthetic data for a second. They actually created 50 different types of synthetic data sets for Phi-4, totaling 400 billion tokens. That's a lot of data. Can you give us an example of one of these data sets and how they actually made sure it was high quality?
So one example is this data set they created using a technique called instruction reversal. What they did was they started with a code snippet and then worked backwards to create instructions that would lead to that code.
So they reverse engineered the process of writing code.
Exactly. And this really helps the model learn to generate outputs from instructions,
Okay.
which is crucial for real-world applications.
That makes sense. But how did they make sure it was accurate?
Well, they made sure that the code snippets they started with were correct. and efficient. They also had experts review the instructions to make sure they were clear and unambiguous.
So they're putting a lot of effort into quality control.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about code. They also validated the scientific facts.
Yeah, they were really meticulous about making sure the model was learning from the best possible examples.
So we've got this data quality obsession, 3 pillars of development,
Yeah.
and a model that's learning to code and do math. But how does Phi-4 actually stack up against other models, especially the ones that are way bigger?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Phi-4 is punching way above its weight class. I mean, it's outperforming similar-sized models on most benchmarks,
Yeah.
which is already impressive. But get this, it's even beating much larger models on certain tasks.
Wait, are you serious? We're talking about a model that's significantly smaller, taking on these AI behemoths and coming out on top. That's like David versus Goliath.
I know, right? And it's particularly impressive in STEM tasks. It even surpassed its own teacher model on some benchmarks.
Wow. That's wild. So I'm looking at Table 1 here from the report, and I'm seeing Phi-4 going head-to-head with models like Llama 3.3, which has 70 billion parameters.
Yeah.
And Phi-4 is holding its own or even surpassing it. This is really shaking things up.
It really is.
So what does this mean for someone who might actually use this model?
Well, if you're looking for a model that's particularly strong in STEM, Phi-4 would be a top contender. Its ability to reason and solve problems is truly remarkable.
So let's say I'm a researcher working on a complex physics problem. Could Phi-4 help me with that?
It could definitely be a valuable tool. I mean, Phi-4 excels at tasks that involve logical reasoning and problem solving, and it's been trained on a wealth of scientific data, so it could assist with things like generating hypotheses, analyzing data, even writing code for simulations.
That's incredible. It's like having a super intelligent research assistant at your fingertips.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not all sunshine and roses, right? Every model has its limitations.
That's true. And the report is refreshingly honest about Phi-4's weaknesses.
Well, I like that they're upfront about it. Transparency is key when we're talking about such powerful tech. So what are some of the areas where Phi-4 falls short?
Well, one limitation is that it can still hallucinate, particularly when it comes to factual knowledge. It might confidently state something as fact, even if it's completely incorrect.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. If you ask Phi-4 about a historical event that it hasn't been trained on, it might invent details, or even create entirely fictional accounts.
So it's still prone to those creative writing moments.
Yeah, basically.
Got it.
So what else?
Another weakness is that it's not as good at following very specific instructions. It tends to excel at broader reasoning tasks, but it can struggle when you need it to perform a very precise sequence of actions.
So it's like a brilliant student who excels at tackling those complex problems, but needs a little more guidance when it comes to following step-by-step instructions.
That's a great analogy.
Now, how do these weaknesses compare to larger models? Are they any better at avoiding these pitfalls? Larger models tend to have a broader knowledge base, simply because they've been trained on more data, so this can make them less prone to factual errors, but they can still hallucinate. And when it comes to following specific instructions, it's not always a clear-cut case of bigger is better. Some larger models might be better at following rigid instructions, but they also might be less adaptable and creative in their problem solving.
So it's trade-off.
Exactly.
It really depends on what you need the model to do.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that one of Phi-4's strengths is its ability to avoid making stuff up. By recognizing when it doesn't know the answer, they achieved this through DPO, direct preference optimization, but they also came up with a brand new technique for DPO called pivotal token search.
Right?
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So pivotal token search is all about finding the essential parts of a solution or a piece of text. Imagine you're reading a complex scientific paper and you're trying to extract the key findings. Pivotal token search is like a highlighter that identifies the crucial sentences or phrases, the ones that really drive the argument forward. Okay, so it's helping the model focus on the most important parts of the information.
Exactly.
The parts that really matter for understanding and solving a problem.
And then they use this information to guide the model's training, making it more efficient and effective.
So it's like they're saying, hey, model, pay extra attention to these parts. These are the real game changers.
Exactly.
It's all about maximizing the learning from each piece of data.
Precisely.
Now, one thing that really stood out to me in the report was the discussion of Phi-4's performance on the math benchmark.
Oh, yeah. The math benchmark. That one was exciting.
I know, I was really impressed.
Well, this benchmark uses problems from actual math competitions. including the November 2024 AMC competitions.
Okay.
And those were released after all the training data was collected for Phi-4.
So it's like a real-world test, something the model couldn't have possibly seen before.
Exactly. And the results were really impressive. Phi-4 not only outperformed similar-sized models, but it also surpassed much larger models, including some state-of-the-art language models.
Whoa, hold on. So it's not just memorizing patterns. It's
Right.
actually learning to reason and solve problems, like a human would.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It provides strong evidence that Phi-4's performance is genuine. It's not just overfitting to existing benchmarks.
Which is a big concern these days.
Absolutely.
Especially when we're talking about how these models might be used in the real world. We want to make sure they can generalize to new situations and challenges.
Right.
So it sounds like Phi-4 is doing pretty well in that regard.
It is. It also excelled on the GPQA benchmark, which focuses on graduate-level STEM questions.
Okay, so we're talking about some seriously challenging material here.
Yeah, and Phi-4 handled it with remarkable accuracy and insight.
That's incredible. And I remember seeing that it also performed really well on coding benchmarks, like Human Eval and Human Eval Plus.
Yes, those are tough benchmarks.
Yeah, those are designed to test a model's ability to generate correct and functional code.
Right.
And Phi-4 was right up there with the top performers, even surpassing some models that were much larger.
It really makes you rethink what's possible with these smaller models.
It does. It's not all about size anymore.
Exactly.
Now, in addition to all of those benchmarks, the team behind Phi-4 also created their own internal benchmark called Phi-Bench.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of that?
Well, Phi-Bench was designed specifically to evaluate the skills and reasoning abilities that they thought were most important for Phi-4. So it goes beyond those standard benchmarks that we often see in AI research, and it provides a more tailored and comprehensive assessment of Phi-4's capabilities.
Got it. So it's like a custom-designed test to ensure that Phi-4 was excelling in those specific areas.
Exactly.
It makes sense. As these models become more advanced, we need better tools to assess their true potential.
For sure.
And it sounds like Phi-Bench played a key role in guiding their decisions about the data selection, the training methods, and all of the post-training refinements.
It was a crucial part of the entire development process.
Okay, now one thing that really struck me as interesting was the fact that Phi-4 was trained to be multilingual.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just limited to English.
It can handle a variety of languages, like German, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Hindi, and Japanese.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's breaking down language barriers, opening up a whole world of possibilities for communication.
It is.
I love that. It's like AI can connect us and bridge cultural divides.
Exactly.
Now, we talked about the 3 pillars of Phi-4's development: the synthetic data,
Yeah.
the organic data curation, and the post-training. But there's another element that I think is worth exploring a little bit more: the use of agent kit data during training.
Yeah, the Agent Kit data.
Yeah. So what is agent kit data?
Well, Agent Kit is a tool for developing AI agents, which are basically software programs that can perform tasks autonomously.
So it's like training a language model to think like an AI agent.
Exactly.
And why would they do that?
Well, by including Agent Kit data in the training set, they exposed Phi-4 to more complex, multi-step reasoning processes. Agent Kit is all about training AI agents to perform tasks in environments that require planning, decision-making, and interaction with the world.
So it's like giving Phi-4 a taste of what it's like to operate in a more dynamic and challenging setting.
Exactly. And this helps the model develop stronger reasoning and problem-solving skills.
That's really interesting. And it speaks to this broader trend of moving beyond those traditional language modeling tasks toward more interactive and goal-oriented AI systems.
It does. It's not just about understanding text and generating responses anymore. It's about training AI to actually solve real-world problems and interact with the world in more meaningful ways.
Okay, so we've talked about all these incredible capabilities, but we can't talk about responsible AI without addressing the issue of safety mitigation. And it seems like the team behind Phi-4 was acutely aware of the potential risks here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They took specific steps to mitigate hallucinations, which, as we've discussed, is a common problem with language models.
So how did they tackle this challenge?
Well, they used a combination of techniques, including data augmentation and fine-tuning. They specifically created data sets designed to teach the model to recognize when it doesn't know the answer and to refuse to answer rather than make something up.
So instead of just spitting out an answer...
Even if it's wrong, they're training it to be more discerning and self-aware.
Right. Yeah.
Like teaching it to say, I don't know, instead of just making a wild guess.
That's huge. But even with all these precautions, Are there still concerns about the potential for harm from a model like Phi-4?
That's a really important question. And it's one that we need to keep asking as AI keeps evolving. While Phi-4 has shown impressive capabilities and a strong emphasis on safety, it's important to remember that no AI system is perfect.
So we still need to approach these technologies with caution
We do.
and a healthy dose of critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to one of the most important aspects of Phi-4's development, the emphasis on responsible AI principles. What specific steps did Microsoft take to ensure that Phi-4 was aligned with those ethical considerations and those safety standards?
Well, one of the big things was the red teaming exercise, which is a standard practice in security and increasingly being applied to AI development.
Okay, so they brought in a team of experts whose job was to basically try to break the model, find those vulnerabilities or that potential for harm.
Exactly. They threw everything they could at it, adversarial prompts, attempts to jailbreak the model, and the goal was to find those weaknesses and fix them before releasing it to the public.
And how did Phi-4 hold up?
Well, it actually did really well. The red team found that Phi-4 was generally robust and resistant to those attacks. But of course, no system is perfect. There's always a chance that new vulnerabilities or attack methods could emerge.
So ongoing testing is essential.
Oh, absolutely. AI safety is an ongoing process.
Makes sense. So these responsible AI frameworks are really important then.
Yeah, they provide those guidelines and best practices to help minimize the potential harms.
So what are some of the key things that these frameworks address?
They cover a wide range of issues, from bias and fairness to privacy and security, and they emphasize transparency and accountability.
So being open about how the model works, what data it was trained on, what its limitations are.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So it sounds like Phi-4 is a great example of how to balance innovation with responsibility.
I think so.
It's really encouraging. And I remember reading that the team behind Phi-4 was extremely meticulous about cleaning and filtering the data. They even built custom extractors to make sure everything was top-notch. What were some of the key considerations during that process?
Well, they really emphasized identifying and prioritizing sources that were rich in reasoning and problem-solving content, for example. They favored academic papers, high-quality code, and educational materials over more casual forms of writing.
So it's not just about accuracy. It's about choosing data that encourages the model to think deeply.
Exactly.
And I'm sure they also took steps to eliminate content that could lead to harmful or inappropriate outputs.
Oh, absolutely. They were very careful about that.
Which is so important because these models can reflect the biases in the data.
They can.
So careful curation is essential.
Yeah.
Okay, now one of the things I found particularly interesting in the report was this whole discussion of long context training.
Yeah. The long context training.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
So long context training basically refers to training a model on sequences of text that are much longer than what was typically used in the past. So this allows the model to understand and process information over a much wider scope, which is really important for tasks that involve reasoning over long documents or complex narratives.
So instead of just looking at a few sentences or a paragraph at a time, the model can take in a whole chapter or even a whole book and make connections across that larger context.
Exactly.
That's incredible. So what were the benefits of this long context training for Phi-4?
Well, it led to some really impressive improvements in tasks that require reasoning over longer pieces of text. Like, for example, there's this benchmark called Helmet, which tests models on a variety of long context tasks. And it showed that Phi-4 was able to perform well on things like retrieving information from long documents, answering questions from multiple sources, and summarizing lengthy legal documents.
So it's a big step towards making AI models more capable of handling the kind of complex information that we encounter in the real world.
It is.
Now, even with all of Phi-4's strengths.
Yeah.
And it's impressive performance. I'm sure there are still some areas where it struggles.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No model is perfect.
Right. The report is pretty upfront about Phi-4's limitations.
It is.
So let's talk about those. What are some of the things that Phi-4 still needs to work on?
Well, as we mentioned before, hallucinations can still happen, especially when dealing with factual information that it hasn't been trained on.
Right. Those moments where it confidently states something that's just wrong.
Yeah. And while they've taken steps to mitigate this, it's still an ongoing challenge for language models in general.
So it's a reminder that we can't just blindly trust these models. We need to be cautious
Right.
and think critically about the information they provide.
I agree.
So what else? Are there other areas where Phi-4 struggles?
Yeah. Another area is in tasks that require very specific instruction following. It tends to be better at those broader reasoning and problem-solving tasks.
Right,
Right?
right. Like we were talking about earlier, it's like that brilliant student
Yeah.
who excels at those complex problems, but needs more guidance with step-by-step instructions.
Exactly.
So it's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
It is.
If you need a model that can follow precise instructions, Phi-4 might not be the best fit. But if you need something for reasoning and problem solving, especially in those STEM fields, then its strengths might outweigh those limitations.
Exactly.
And I think that's a key takeaway from this discussion. Phi-4 is powerful,
Hmm.
but it's not a magic bullet. It's still under development. And there are areas where it can improve.
Sure.
So we need to approach these technologies with both excitement and a healthy dose of realism.
I agree.
We should be excited about what they can do, but also aware of their limitations
Right.
and use them responsibly.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We've explored the technical details of Phi-4, its strengths, its weaknesses, and all those ethical considerations. It's been a really fascinating discussion.
It has.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I have one more question for you. Given all of Phi-4's strengths and its focus on quality over quantity, do you think this approach could be applied to other areas of AI, beyond language models?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is yes, absolutely. Phi-4's success with this data-centric approach suggests that it could be really valuable in other areas of AI.
So instead of just chasing bigger and bigger models, we should be thinking about how to create better data sets
Yeah.
and training methods
Yeah,
that are
exactly.
tailored to specific tasks.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. And this is especially important in fields where data is scarce or where ethical considerations are really crucial,
I agree.
like healthcare, for example,
Exactly.
or climate modeling,
Or drug discovery.
where the stakes are high and the data can be really complex.
Exactly.
So Phi-4's legacy might go far beyond language models.
It might.
It could inspire a whole new way of thinking about AI development,
It could.
one that prioritizes data quality and responsible AI principles.
Yeah. That's a really exciting prospect.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Phi-4, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've seen how this model is really challenging the status quo, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with smaller, more efficient AI.
Right.
And it's all thanks to this focus on data quality and responsible development.
And it's a reminder that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes the most groundbreaking innovations come from rethinking the fundamentals and finding smarter ways to train and deploy these tools.
So the next time you hear about a new AI breakthrough, don't just focus on the hype. Ask yourself, what kind of data was used? How was it developed? What are the ethical implications?
These are the questions that will shape the future of AI.
They really will. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
It's been great.
And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned something new today and that you're feeling inspired to explore the world of AI with a critical and curious mind.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Phi-4 is really going up against some of the biggest models out there, and it's doing really well. Like, it's outperforming similar-sized models on almost all the benchmarks, which is already, impressive in itself. But then it gets even better. It's actually beating out much larger models on certain tasks.
Hold on, so we're talking about a model that's much smaller, like significantly smaller, and it's taking these AI giants and winning. That's wild.
Yeah, it's really shaping up people's assumptions about what's possible. And it's especially impressive when you look at its performance on STEM tasks. Like, it even surpassed its own teacher model.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Remember, that teacher model is much larger. But Phi-4, with all that focus on data quality, it was able to learn and adapt even better in some areas.
That's amazing. So I'm looking at the table here in the report, Table 1, and it shows Phi-4 going head-to-head with models like Llama 3.3, which has like 70 billion parameters.
Right.
And Phi-4 is either right there with it or even beating it in some cases.
Yeah, it's really turning heads.
So what does this all mean for someone who might actually use this model?
Well, if you're looking for a model that's really strong in STEM fields, Phi-4 would definitely be a top contender. Its ability to reason and actually solve those complex problems is pretty remarkable.
So if I'm like a researcher working on some crazy physics problem, Phi-4 could actually help me with that.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it excels at tasks that involve logical reasoning and problem solving. And it's been trained on so much scientific data. So yeah, it could help you generate hypotheses, analyze data, maybe even write code for simulations.
That's pretty wild. It's like having a super intelligent research assistant.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's not all perfect, right? I mean, every model has its limitations.
Oh, yeah, of course. And the report is actually pretty honest about Phi-4's weaknesses.
Which I appreciate. It's good to see that transparency. So what are some of the things that Phi-4 struggles with?
Well, one thing is it can still hallucinate sometimes, especially when it comes to factual knowledge. Like, it might state something as a fact, even if it's completely made up.
Do you give us an example of that?
Yeah, sure. Like, if you were to ask Phi-4 about a historical event that it hasn't been specifically trained on, it might invent details, or even create a completely fictional account.
Okay, so it's got a little bit of a creative side.
Sometimes, yeah. Another weakness is that it's not always the best at following very specific instructions. It tends to do really well with those broader reasoning tasks. But when you need it to do something very specific, step by step, that's where it can have some trouble.
So it's like, it's this brilliant student
Mhm.
who can ace the exams, but then struggles when you ask them to follow a recipe.
That's a great analogy.
Now, how do these weaknesses compare to the larger models? Are they any better at avoiding these pitfalls?
Well, larger models generally have a broader knowledge base just because they've been trained on more data, so that can make them less prone to some of those factual errors. But they can still hallucinate. And when it comes to following instructions, it's not always a straightforward case of bigger is better. Like, some larger models might be better at following rigid instructions, but they might also be less adaptable or creative.
So it really depends on what you're trying to do with the model.
Exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that one of Phi-4's strengths is its ability to avoid making stuff up by recognizing when it doesn't know the answer. And you said they achieved this through direct preference optimization for DPO. But they also came up with this new technique for DPO called pivotal token search.
Right.
What is that?
Well, pivotal token search is all about finding the most important parts of a solution or a piece of text. It's like, imagine you're reading a really complex scientific paper and you're trying to figure out the key findings. Pivotal token search is like a highlighter. That identifies those crucial sentences, the ones that are really driving the main points.
Okay, so it's like it's helping the model focus on the most important information.
Exactly, the parts that really matter for understanding the problem.
And then they use this information to actually guide the model's training to make it more efficient and effective.
Right.
It's like saying, hey, model, pay extra attention to these parts. These are the real game changers.
Exactly. It's all about maximizing the learning potential of the data.
And this ties back to their whole philosophy of data quality.
Right.
They're not just throwing data at the model. They're being very strategic about it.
Right.
Now, one thing that really stood out to me in the report was the discussion of Phi-4's performance on something called the math benchmark.
Oh, yeah. The math benchmark. That was a really exciting one.
It was. Tell me about it.
So this benchmark uses problems from actual math competitions, including the November 2024 AMC competitions, which were released after Phi-4 was trained.
Oh, wow. So the model had never seen these problems before.
Right.
It's a true test then.
It is.
And how did Phi-4 do?
Well, it not only outperformed other models of a similar size, but it also beat out much larger models, including some of the most advanced language models out there.
Wow. So it's not just memorizing patterns, it's actually learning to reason.
Yeah, it's actually solving problems like a human would.
That's impressive.
It is.
It also did really well on the GPQA benchmark.
Right, which focuses on graduate-level STEM questions.
So we're talking about some really challenging material.
Yeah, definitely.
And Phi-4 was able to handle it with accuracy and insight,
It did. It actually outperformed much larger models in this area.
showing that it can really understand those complex concepts.
Right.
And I also remember that it performed really well on some coding benchmarks, like Human Evol and Human Evol Plus.
Yeah, those are tough ones.
Yeah, they are. They're designed to test a model's ability to write code.
Right. Correct. And functional code.
And Phi-4 was right up there with the best,
It was.
even surpassing some models that were much bigger.
It's really making people question that whole idea that model size is everything.
It is. I mean, it shows you that you can get incredible results with a smaller model
Yeah.
if you focus on the right things.
Absolutely. It's about quality over quantity.
Now, I know in addition to all those standard benchmarks, the team behind Phi-4 actually created their own internal benchmark called Phi-Bench.
They did.
Why did they do that?
Well, Phi-Bench was designed specifically to evaluate the skills and the reasoning abilities that they considered most important for Phi-4.
So it's like a custom designed test to make sure that the model was excelling in those specific areas that they were targeting.
Exactly.
It makes sense. I mean, as these models become more complex, we need better ways to assess their true capabilities.
We do.
And it sounds like Feebench played a pretty key role in guiding their decisions about the data, the training methods, and all those post-training refinements.
It did. It was an essential part of the whole process.
Now, one thing that I thought was really cool is that Phi-4 was trained to be multilingual.
Yeah.
So it's not just limited to English.
No, it can actually handle several different languages,
Like what?
like German,
Yeah.
Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Hindi, and Japanese.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's breaking down those language barriers,
It is.
opening up new possibilities for communication and collaboration.
Exactly.
I love that. It's like AI can help us connect with people from all over the world.
Yep.
And we talked earlier about the 3 pillars of Phi-4's development: the synthetic data, the organic data curation, and post-training. But there was something else that I wanted to touch on: the use of AgentKit data during training.
Right.
What is AgentKit data?
Well, AgentKit is a tool that's used to develop AI agents, which are basically software programs that can do tasks on their own.
Okay, so why would they use that to train a language model?
Well, by including AgentKit data in the training mix, they exposed Phi-4 to those more complex reasoning processes. You see, AgentKit is all about training these AI agents to perform tasks in environments that require them to plan, make decisions, and interact with the world.
So it's like giving Phi-4 a taste of what it's like to be out there in the real world.
Yeah, kind of like a boot camp for AI.
I like that. And this helps Phi-4 develop those stronger reasoning and problem-solving skills.
Right.
It's like cross-training for AI.
Exactly.
Now we can't talk about responsible AI without talking about safety.
Right. Of course not.
And it seems like the team behind Phi-4 was really aware of the potential risks here.
They were.
So what did they do to mitigate those risks?
Well, they took a number of steps to address hallucinations, which, as we talked about, are a common issue with language models.
Right. So what did they do specifically?
Well, they used techniques like data augmentation and fine-tuning. They created data sets that were specifically designed to teach the model to recognize when it didn't know the answer and to refuse to answer in those cases, rather than making something up.
So they're training it to say,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Right.
instead of just guessing.
Exactly.
That's a big deal. But even with all these precautions, are there still concerns about potential harm from a model like Phi-4?
That's a really important question, and it's one that we need to keep asking ourselves. As these technologies continue to evolve, Phi-4 has shown us what it can do, and it's clearly been developed with safety in mind. But we also have to remember that no AI system is completely foolproof.
That's true. So we need to approach these technologies with caution
Absolutely.
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
I
Which brings us to another important aspect of Phi-4, the emphasis on responsible AI principles.
Right.
So what specific steps did they take to make sure that Phi-4 was aligned with ethical considerations and safety standards?
Well, one of the key things they did was the red teaming exercise.
It's a red teaming exercise.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Well, it's basically a standard practice in security, and it's being used more and more in AI development now.
Okay, so they bring in a team of experts, and their job is to try to break the model,
Right.
to find any weaknesses or vulnerabilities.
Exactly. They'll use things like adversarial prompts, try to jailbreak the model, basically anything they can think of.
And the goal is to find those weaknesses
Yeah,
and fix them before the model is released.
exactly.
So how did Phi-4 do against the red team?
It actually did really well. They found that it was quite robust and resistant to a lot of those attacks. But, as we said before, no system is perfect.
Right.
There's always the possibility that new vulnerabilities could be found.
So it's an ongoing process. So these responsible AI frameworks are really important then,
They are.
because they provide those guidelines
Yeah.
and best practices for developing and using AI safely. So what are some of the key things that these frameworks address?
Well, they cover a pretty wide range of issues, from things like bias and fairness to privacy and security. And they really stress the importance of transparency and accountability.
Right. So being open about how the model works,
Yeah.
what data it was trained on,
Yeah.
and what its limitations are.
Exactly.
It's about building trust
Right.
and making sure that this powerful technology is used in a way that benefits everyone.
I agree.
So it sounds like Phi-4 is a good example of how to do that, how to balance innovation with responsibility.
I think it is.
Now, I remember reading that the team behind Phi-4 was really meticulous about cleaning and filtering the data. They even went so far as to build custom extractors to make sure that the data was top-notch. What were some of the key things that they were looking for during that process?
Well, they really wanted to find sources that were strong in reasoning and problem-solving content. So they prioritized things like academic papers, high-quality code, educational materials, over more casual types of writing.
So it's not just about accuracy. It's about choosing data that encourages the model to think deeply,
Exactly.
critically. I'm sure they also took steps to eliminate content that could lead to harmful or inappropriate output,
Oh, yeah. That was a big part of the process.
because these models can learn those biases.
They can.
So careful curation of the data is super important.
It is.
Now, one thing that really caught my attention in the report was this whole discussion of long context training.
Yeah, the long context training.
Now, what is that?
So long context training basically refers to training a model on much longer sequences of text than what was typically used before. So this helps the model understand and process information over a wider scope, which is crucial for those tasks that involve reasoning over long documents or complex narrative.
So instead of just looking at a few sentences
Right.
or a paragraph,
Mhm.
the model can take in a whole chapter or even a whole book
Right.
and make connections across that larger context.
Exactly.
So how did this long context training benefit Phi-4?
Well, it led to significant improvements in tasks that require that kind of reasoning over long passages of text. For instance, there's a benchmark called Helmet, which tests models on a whole bunch of long context tasks. And the results showed that Phi-4 was able to do really well on things like retrieving information from long documents, answering questions that require pulling from multiple sources, and even summarizing long legal documents.
So it's really helping to make AI more capable of handling that real-world information.
It is.
Now, even with all these strengths and all the impressive things that Phi-4 can do, I'm sure there's still some areas where it struggles.
Yeah, of course. No model is perfect.
And the report is pretty transparent about that.
It is.
So what are some of the things that Phi-4 still needs to work on?
Well, as we've already talked about, hallucinations can still happen, especially when it's dealing with factual information that it hasn't seen before.
Yeah. Those moments where it just makes stuff up.
Right.
And even though they've worked to minimize this,
It's still a challenge for language models in general.
so we still need to be careful and use our own judgment.
We do.
Are there other areas where Phi-4 has some limitations?
Yeah, another one is in tasks that require very specific instructions. It's much better at those broader reasoning and problem-solving tasks.
Right. Like that brilliant student who can ace the test, but struggles to follow a recipe.
Exactly.
So it's about using the right tool for the job.
Right.
Phi-4 might not be the best choice for every task,
It might not.
but for those reasoning and problem-solving tasks,
Hmm.
especially in STEM, it might be the perfect fit.
I agree.
So I think that's one of the key takeaways here. Phi-4 is a powerful model, but it's not a magic solution to everything.
Yeah.
It's still being developed.
Yeah.
And there are things that it needs to work on. So we need to approach these technologies with both excitement
Mhm.
and a sense of realism.
I agree.
We should be thrilled by what they can do, but also aware of their limitations and use them responsibly.
Absolutely.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the technical details of Phi-4, its strengths and weaknesses, its performance on those benchmarks, and the ethical considerations.
Right.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
It has.
But before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. Given all of Phi-4's strengths and this focus on quality over quantity, do you think this approach could be applied to other areas of AI beyond language models?
That's a really interesting question. And I think the answer is definitely yes. I mean, Phi-4's success with this data-centric approach suggests that it could be really valuable in other areas of AI research and development.
So instead of just blindly going for bigger and bigger models in every field, maybe we should take a step back and think about how to create better data sets and training methods that are specifically designed for certain tasks and goals.
That's right. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. And I think this is particularly relevant in fields like healthcare, where privacy and accuracy are critical,
Absolutely.
or even in fields like climate modeling or drug discovery, where the stakes are really high and the data is complex.
Yeah, I think those are great examples.
So Phi-4's impact might extend far beyond just language modeling.
It might.
It could inspire a whole new wave of AI development
Yeah.
that really prioritizes data quality and responsible AI principles.
That's a really exciting thought.
It is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Phi-4 today, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've seen how this model is challenging those assumptions about AI, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with a smaller, more efficient model.
Right.
And it's all thanks to this focus on data quality and responsible development.
And it's a good reminder that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes the biggest innovations come from rethinking those fundamentals and finding those smarter, more effective ways to do things.
So next time you hear about some new AI breakthrough, don't just get caught up in the hype. Ask yourself, what kind of data did they use? How was it developed? What are the ethical implications?
Those are the questions that are really going to shape the future of AI.
They are. Well, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Likewise.
Thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. We hope you learned something new and that you're feeling inspired to learn more about the world of AI.
Yeah,
Keep those questions coming. Until next time.
it really is.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into Phi-4, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've seen how this model is challenging the status quo in AI, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with a smaller, more efficient model.
Right.
And it's all thanks to this focus on data quality and responsible development.
It's a good reminder that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes the most groundbreaking innovations come from rethinking the fundamentals, and finding smarter, more effective ways to train and deploy these powerful AI tools.
Absolutely. So the next time you hear about some big AI breakthrough, don't just get caught up in all the hype. Take a moment to ask yourself, what kind of data was used to train this model? How was it developed? How was it evaluated? And what are the ethical implications?
Yeah, those are the questions that will really shape the future of AI.
They are. And it's up to all of us, researchers, developers, users, to make sure that we're using these incredible technologies for good.
I agree.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
It's been great talking to you too.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Phi-4. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking, and that you're feeling inspired to learn more about the fascinating and rapidly evolving world of AI. Remember, the future of AI is in our hands. Let's make it a future we can all be proud of. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.